Hello and welcome to the Friday Digest. Thank you for joining us. And people are still going to be joining, but as we're waiting, please type your name in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Harbeson. I'm Political Director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. And welcome to the final Friday edition of Friday Digest. Your presence here speaks to the power of our community and to your commitment to a healthy environment for everyone in Maryland. Our goal with Friday Digest is always to provide you with the information, the tools, and the resources to be an informed and active advocate. Our agenda is driven by your needs and interests, so please don't hesitate to contact us with your suggestions. And the easiest way to do so is through the survey you'll receive at the end of this session. So again, as you're joining today, please type your name in the chat and tell us where you're coming in from. And please type your questions and comments in the chat throughout the episode. We will do what we can to get to as many of them as possible. Today, we are talking about a topic that has gotten a lot of attention, data centers. And as I think most people know, data centers allow us to have a reliable cloud storage for our email, secure our documents, stream entertainment, and so much more. They also prevent significant challenges when it comes to energy use, water, noise, land use, and other environmental considerations. These challenges have led to a range of legislation over the last few years, which has continued into the 2026 general session of the Maryland General Assembly. And so joining me today to inform our conversation is Maryland's foremost environmental expert on data centers, Mariah Davis of the Marylanders for Data Center Reform, which is a coalition Maryland LCV is very happy to be a participant in. So to get started, Mariah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Marylanders for Data Center Reform?
Sure. And thank you so much, Kristen, Danielle, Maryland LCV, for having me. I find these digests very helpful myself. So happy to be a part of today's discussion. So I'm Mariah Davis. I have a consulting business called Davis Strategies and was lucky enough to be hired by Nature Forward to lead Marylanders for data center reform. We're a pretty new coalition of 50 environmental and social organizations who really care about the impacts that data centers are having to not only the environment, but people and ratepayers. So, yeah, we're still pretty new. We formed in July. We host monthly calls, and we're very active in the state legislature. We were formed to really build grassroots support and power to pass better state legislation when it comes to regulating data centers. So we do interact and work with a ton of grassroots, local groups as well, but we're very focused on the General Assembly session.
Great, thank you. And just you are still hoping that other groups and individuals will join the coalition, right?
Yeah. If there's groups that want to join, we have a Google form online. We host monthly calls, and when we can, we get together in person.
Great. And I think that there's a link in the chat already. So can you tell us a little bit about, so how does Maryland compare either nationally or against our neighboring states when it comes to the regulatory framework around data centers?
Yeah, as of right now, when it comes to Maryland, we don't have any kind of regulatory framework for data centers. So I would say compared to other states, we are very far behind. There is some good stuff that could come out of session today this year that could really put us on a path forward to having more of a regulatory framework. But right now, we do not have one. And there's other states I know like Maine, New York, Virginia, Georgia, Oklahoma. They're a lot farther ahead, even Texas. We have actually taken a pretty thoughtful approach to really learn from those other states because Maryland just has so much work to do.
And just for context, obviously we know that Virginia uh, has a almost 300. I mean, even just in the Potomac Basin, there are almost 300 data centers, large data centers, over the border in Virginia. Where are we in terms of the development in Maryland of data centers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess first and foremost, we have had data centers in this country for a few decades. We have data centers in Maryland. They are smaller. What we're concerned about is the development of hyperscale data centers. These things are the size of malls and even bigger. Um, but I think we have around maybe like 12 or 15, and then we have another 12 or 15 that are being proposed. I'll address this later, but it's actually really incredibly hard to track and understand how many data centers we have due to some transparency laws.
Well, and I think that actually gets to the question. So, what do you see as the top challenges Maryland is facing when we're looking at data centers? And are there best practices that we should be following that address those?
Yeah, I can first talk about overall giving like a high level overview of supply and demand, but we operate under a regional grid operator called PJM. There are other grid operators that other states operate under, and I think ours has some of the biggest challenges when it comes to supply and demand, and also just how data centers are overall regulated. I'm not a PJM expert, but there's a lot of really good reform happening when it comes to data centers. If we had cleaner sources of energy getting online quicker and better, I think that would really help address some of the public health concerns, but also the cost to ratepayers. And then in terms of just AI in general, you have these, we're talking about fighting, the big billionaires in our country, companies like Google, Amazon, Meta. These are all of the folks that are building the data center. So there's a ton of business interests that we're really fighting against as AI continues to expand and money talks. So that's really what we're really up in terms of trying to combat. There's also some over forecasting issues that are happening when it comes to PJM and really looking out to the future. But there's an over forecasting and an overestimate of our energy supply needs. So there's lots of challenges when it comes to just energy and supply and demand, but then also a lot of challenges when it comes to fighting against these billionaire companies.
Yeah, and just to take a step back, I think, because we went deep into the weeds really fast. You and I know that that is my favorite place to be. You should see my garden. But I just to take a step back, when you're talking
Right.
about like that, the forecasting and the loads, there's a phrase that's been coming up called the phantom load, right? That's what you're talking
Mhm.
about. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
the
which
phantom load, and I wouldn't say I'm too in the weeds on it, but it's basically a false prediction about our energy supply needs. And so there's a real driver behind data centers. They see, oh, we need all this, we need to bring all of our supply, and this is a business and a money opportunity for us. But yeah, we're operating a lot of under these false predictions, these false phantom loads, and there's a lot of opportunity to really hold the data centers accountable, but also our government and our state leaders to get those numbers and those predictions more accurate.
Yeah, and so and again, just to take a step back so people understand what we're talking about, these companies, these big companies are coming in and they're saying, we want to build a data center in Prince George's County, but they're also saying, but the same company is saying, we want to build a data center in Garrett County, and we want to build a data center in Pennsylvania, and we want to build a data center, right? And so they might be building one data center, but they have proposals for four.
Hmm.
And so they're expecting the grid to have to accommodate four because they're not talking to each other about what is the actual expectation. And so when you are asking for, the four times the amount of load, and I'm just using that number as a for instance, um, that is what causes the market to explode and
Hmm.
cause our energy bills to go up even more than they need to because there's been so much talk about the increased energy rates, and this contributes to that, right?
Right. Yep.
So and just like so, uh, and again, to take a step back, when we're talking about these things, we're talking about the energy demand you mentioned. water and pollution and air pollution. So can you talk a little bit about what we're talking about when we're talking about those things?
I'm sorry, you said in
In
terms
terms of
of,
like what kinds of when we're talking about the pollution, what are we talking
oh,
about? The
yeah.
environmental impacts.
I mean, data centers have a huge impact on our, water supply, energy supply, land supply. When a data center company is looking to develop, they're looking to see, do I have water availability? Do I have energy availability? So, opportunities to hook up to transmission. And is there land availability? So all of those things are impacted by the data center. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River. They've done some interesting projections around impacts of data centers because there's so many data centers coming to Northern Virginia and now Maryland. The Potomac River is a huge drinking water supply for the DMV, and it's also a huge tributary to the Bay. So they've done some interesting projections about how the river, our local rivers are being impacted when it comes to just the demand that data centers are having and how much water that they need. And then air pollution is a huge concern especially when it comes to how the data centers are being powered. A lot of them are being powered by fossil fuels. A lot of them run on, backup generation diesel that's very harmful. These backup diesel generators, they, go through maintenance. They have to be turned on once a month. But when you have data center 300 data centers around you that you're living next to, or if a data center is 100 feet within your home, all of that adds up, because you have to really think about those cumulative impacts. Noise is also a concern as well. And then, yeah, I would say, when it comes to land preservation, land conservation, that's certainly a challenge. I saw in the news recently, I think there was a farmer that was approached in the data center, said, we'll give you, 20 something $1 million for your land. And they said no. So air, water, land are all, very much impacted by when a data center comes into town.
Yeah, and Maryland is what people who spend any time with me hear me say this a lot. Maryland is a really little state with really big goals, and all of those goals require land. And so data centers is just one more demand on that land.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of what you just talked about feeds into a question we've gotten from our friend Jennifer, about the idea of Amazon could take massive energy away from the grid by directly taking it from Calvert Cliffs. So have you followed that issue at all in terms of the co-location with Calvert Cliffs nuclear plant?
Not deeply. I have to say I've been pretty in the weeds just on our state legislation. But the one thing that I will say is that the proliferation of data centers in our state is really unfortunately causing a lot of, I would say, local officials, state officials, um, operators to reconsider reopening areas like Calvert Cliffs and others. There's unfortunately a good handful of these places that produce energy that want to be powered by data centers. So yeah, Calvert Cliffs, I think, is one of many proposals that are kind of on the table when it comes to reopening these, generating power stations. Reinvestments in coal, all of that is pretty scary. But yeah, all of those things are a real concern.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, again, and as we were saying beforehand, you and I can talk about data centers all day. Um, but and we have. But so just so we were in the middle of we're nearing the end of the legislative session.
Mhm.
There have been a number of proposals around data centers that have come through this year, good, bad, and ugly. And we're really honing in on the whatever is going to be passed is going to be passed as part of the Utility Relief Act that House Bill 1532, Senate Bill 841. which is on third reader in the Senate right now and is expected to be sent to a conference committee. So what data centers have you been tracking? What data center provisions have been in or were made in where, like, what tell us about the session, the bills that you've been tracking on this year, and where they stand.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about some bills that we have worked on, we've been tracking, and then I can kind of transition into the energy omnibus bill. When it comes to our coalition priorities, we've been really working closely with a lot of elected officials around data centers. There were some good proposals. One from Delegate Ruth. We started to talk a little bit about transparency. There's a lot of challenges around transparency when it comes to knowing where these data centers are being built, how much air, water, and land, are they really impacting? So there was a very good bill from Delegate Ruth called the Data Center Planning and Transparency Act. It did not pass this year, but we're going to continue to follow it and work on it. There was also a great bill from Senator Sidnor about removing non-disclosure agreements. So when a data center comes into town, it's very hard to know any information about them. They're very secretive, and they try to keep that information as such. And that's due to non-disclosure agreements. So there was a very good positive bill from Senator Sidnor, again, to increase transparency and to remove those NDAs. That did not pass, but it's definitely something that we want to continue to work on with the senator. A couple other good bills that did not pass that I want to make sure everybody knows about. These are related to taxes. We have a few tax laws that I think have really incentivized hyperscale data centers to want to move into the state. These are tax laws that would give tax breaks to data centers to build and for their equipment. There was a very good and strong effort from Delegate Pavlovich Carr to repeal those data center tax breaks. That did not pass. What's really interesting is that Virginia actually they got to the end of their session. They're currently at a standhold. They could not agree on their budget because of a data center tax repeal that they have on the book. So it would be a really big deal if we also got rid of our tax break laws. That did not pass. And then there were a couple other good proposals to actually tax data centers. So if the hyperscale data centers are going to be here, I say we should tax them. A lot of the hyperscale data centers, they're courting local governments, state governments to say, hey, we'll come to your state and we can fund your public schools and we can fund your local fire department and do all these positive things for your state budget. That can't happen unless we actually tax them. So unfortunately, that bill did not pass. But we did have some other top priorities that passed, and we're putting a lot of effort into these. And those are in the bills HB 152, SB 831, the Utility Relief Act. So we were successful in getting a proposal for a voluntary demand response, voluntary clean capacity program, which is basically an energy efficiency program for data centers. So when they're operating at peak load and using a ton of energy, this encourages them to shift their energy so that our emergency services can continue to run. We're also encouraging that data centers bring their own new clean energy or Beyonce with them. So there's some very strong language in the bill that would incentivize and prioritize data centers who bring new clean energy onto the grid. Also in the bill, there's some updated, stronger tariff language that we really like. That's going to, continue to charge data centers for their energy usage. There are some positive things in there for ratepayer protections. The two previous things I mentioned are going to be good for ratepayers to help reduce cost. The other things is requiring data centers to pay for their transmission and their distribution. So a lot of the big infrastructure that data centers require to be built, we pay for that as ratepayers, but there are some positive requirements for better ratepayer protections. I will say the bill can go even stronger in terms of providing more protections for ratepayers by charging data centers for the energy and their energy build out. That is not in the bill, but we're still very supportive of the other ratepayer protections that the bill has centered on. The last thing is a large load registry. A lot of this and a lot of these provisions in this bill were championed by Senator Katie Fry Hester, who we've been working very closely with, and Delegate Charkoudian as well, who's been a huge champion on all of this as technical experts and energy experts. But the large load registry would require that data centers register with the state, and they provide information on their water usage, their where their power is coming from, where they're going to be located. In the House bill, there's some strong requirements around transparency so that that information is publicly available so that we can see what's going on as residents, and it would also turn it into a map. So these are all things that we really support, and that we've been working really hard on this session, and hopeful to see some positivity. I do believe that should all of this pass, should all of these requirements happen, that this would really be the start of Maryland, taking a step in the right direction to finally start to have a regulatory framework. I'll say that I'm very optimistic about how things are looking, and it's got support from people in high places, and it's important we continue to keep the pressure on. We've got an action alert going on. I can share that with LCV. I know they've been working on one as well.
Yeah, the and so again, the weeds is where I live. And so what's happening right now in usually in these things, we like to be able to say, hey, what we want you to do is we want you to vote for this bill, or here's a bill number, and we want you to vote for this bill, or we want, this is a bad bill, we want you to vote against this bill. And we can't really do that this year with this bill because it is a enormous bill. And there are things, and so the House passed one version of the bill, and the Senate passed another version of the bill, and each one has things that we like. Where the Senate did something that was stronger than the House, or the House did something that was stronger than the other. So we'll be communicating sort of, and again, we as part of the Maryland Data Coalition for Data Center Reform, we've been working together to figure out what is on this issue, what is the strongest version that they should be looking for. So what we're going to be asking for are people to be talking to the small group of members of both the House and the Senate who will be in the conference committee to reconcile the two versions of the bill and figure out what comes out from the other side. And so we're going to be asking for things like transparency and that large load registry, and the things that allow for that ensure that data centers are clean, transparent, and pay their own way, because it's so important. And when we're talking about the tax breaks, the tax break that was passed that it's a sales tax exemption for the mechanical equipment and in the data centers, which is something like 60%, 55 or 60% of the total construction cost of a data center. So we're talking about, in some of these cases, we're talking about $1 billion project, which means tens of millions of dollars are sacrificed by giving this sales
Yeah.
tax break.
To add to that, we inquired about how much money exactly, and the state doesn't do they could be doing a better job at tracking that, but we've given over $22 million in those tax breaks so far.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, so these are things of figuring out where are the data centers and how do we identify where these are going. And so I think a lot of what you're talking about, again, it's about the transparency and making sure that we all know what's coming, and making sure that we're talking to our communities and that communities are engaged in defending what they need, community benefits agreements, and making sure that they're getting something from these, these businesses are coming into their communities. So yeah, so there, do you have other let's look. I think we've got a little bit of time for some questions that have come in. Again, we can talk about this all day, but so a couple questions that came in um, that I think you've touched on a little bit. Why is the demand for new data centers suddenly increasing so rapidly? This comes from our friend Doug.
Yeah, I would say money talks. It's a business interest. Again, these are Google, Amazon that are behind these developments. As we continue to build out AI. What a data center is it's the cloud that we all think of that holds all of our data. So if you're using technology on a daily basis, even us being on Zoom right now, we do need data centers to power and hold that information, but we don't actually need as many that are coming online. So a lot of it is business interest. There's a lot of incentives there as well.
And so one of the arguments is that we've been hearing over the last several years is that, well, because we are on this 13 state grid called the PJM and things are being built in Virginia, we are paying for those data centers even if we're not, but when we're not getting the benefits of it. So one of the arguments to be trying to attract more data centers to Maryland has been, well, if we're going to be paying for it, we should be getting some of the benefits. How do you respond to that question, to that uh,
Sorry, could you repeat it exactly
so
what?
if we overregulate data centers
Mm-hmm.
more than our neighboring states, they'll
Mm-hmm.
build those states and we'll still be paying for them
Yeah,
without receiving any of the benefits.
I say so. So be it.
The oh, I think did I freeze? Did you freeze?
Oh,
Um,
am I here?
oh, there you are. I
Okay.
hear you. Yeah. So
Oh,
and the other questions, I guess, sort of part of the attachment to that is,
yeah.
so can we manage if we don't build data centers?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so. What I was sort of getting at too is, I care about Maryland. I care about impacts to Marylanders. Again, we already have data centers that are here in our state, and I don't think that we necessarily, need more. Our position when it comes to this work is that we're not necessarily anti data centers. Again, because we have data centers in the state, we do need them for our modern everyday society. However, we want to see better regulation when it comes to the build out of hyperscale data centers. We started to get into, things like Calvert Cliffs, reopening, and that's been closed and harmful. There's a ton of other proposals that are like that are happening around the state. So it's having this huge ripple effect. It's driven again by business interest, and in my opinion, the short term gains, I don't think are worth the long lasting impacts that we will continue to see. If it's a money issue, I would encourage our local government and state government to get a little bit more creative on how we can balance better budgets and support local businesses and lift up other people and residents and not put profits over people.
Well, I appreciate that. As we're just closing in, this a half hour always goes so fast. So do you have any final words about about how should people get in touch with you if they want to join the Data Center Coalition and get more information?
Yeah, please feel free to share my email with everybody after this. Kristen and Danielle put in the chat box the sign up form to join our coalition work. We, hosted a lobby day this year for the first time, which was a good time. And, we're very focused on policy and policy development. So if you have some good ideas, we encourage organizations to join our coalition and be a part of what we're doing. And thank you again, Maryland LCV, Kristen, Danielle, and I hope we get some good things coming out of this session.
Great. Well, we appreciate your time so much. And that is all the time we have. And as we wrap up, I want to thank again Mariah for the perspective and tireless advocacy on behalf of Marylanders and your work in organizing all of these interests to around the Coalition for Data Center Reform, which has been a really satisfying and exciting group to be part of. And to our audience, thank you all for joining us and for your support in our work. If you don't already, we hope you'll follow us here and on Facebook and on Instagram. Next week, there will be no Friday Digest, but we will have a special Tuesday edition Friday Digest on April 14th, the day after Sine Die, which occurs the day before. So we'll discuss, and on that Tuesday, we'll discuss all the environmental legislation of note that passed during the 2026 legislation session. That we can give you an update on what happened with all the things we've been talking about today. With data centers. But in the meantime, please sign up for our emails, follow us on social media, and as we follow up this final week in the legislative session. And finally, we hope that you'll fill out the short 5-question survey, which should be in the chat now. And thank you. Have a really wonderful day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Thanks, everybody.